All right, testing, this is on, yep. Thank you first to It's and Park for tonight. It's actually a real privilege to talk to you all about photography because I am not a photographer. My background, I have 2 degrees, one in medical science, one in business. I'm a chartered accountant. I work in software consulting. And I'm not a photographer. But I, like many people here, take photos with a mobile phone. I started back in 2008, and I was sharing images on Twitter at the time from Sydney, which is where I'm from. I moved to London about just over a year ago. And we had this massive dust storm in Sydney, and I took a photo of my brother pretending to be a zombie. And it went pretty well. I was used to seeing I think maybe 80 to 120 views on TwitPic, which is where I was using to share my images at the time. And this went up 300, 600, 1,000, 3,000. And because I'd shared it on Twitter and it was being shared a lot, I had Germans asking me, "Are you okay?" You know, but it kind of gave me some realization that, you know, the right composition, the right context, and social media is a very powerful platform to share an image. It also kind of made me aware that my brother looks pretty awful. Yeah, dust on. And then I started taking a lot of street photography with a mobile phone. So this is shot I think 2011 with an iPhone 4S. My first experiences with mobile photography were really around street photography. I would walk out of work, which was not a very creative experience in finance, and I would set my exposure and I'd shoot street photography. Sydney's not bad for that, pretty good light. So this image kind of taught me a lot, gave me a lot of credibility in terms of what a phone could do, because I could prove to people that you can actually take decent photos with mobile phones, that you can actually take quality work for these devices. And I shot a lot more street photography. Everywhere I went, phone was out, churning through battery, to the point where I now carry 2 extra batteries with me, and I can always plug them in and keep shooting. Editing on the fly, sharing on the same day, in the same hour, same minute if it's worth sharing. Shooting street photography now in London, so, you know, humorous incidents, all these people here shooting the London Naked Bike Ride. My purpose is not to shoot what's happening, but also get the context, get a composition, try to take all the lessons I got from National Geographic magazines, which is what I grew up with, you know, this kind of high quality photojournalism, which kind of gave me an interest in photography, but gave me no information, no idea what film they use, what camera. To share these images now on a platform where I can actually talk to people, and if they ask me, what devices have you used, I can tell them. So shooting these sort of things to riots in Sydney. Street photography, sort of looking at interesting compositions and not having to be constrained by shooting through a viewfinder, shooting almost like the hand is a kind of an extension of the eye, not having to look actually at the screen, but knowing that what's going to be in frame. They call it shooting from the hip, but it's not from here, it's from wherever I need the camera to be. A lot of street photography. I think this is where mobile photography has really blossomed. There's a lot of apps that allow you to edit images on mobile devices. But for me, it's this discrete device which allows you to really capture what's happening around you, whether it's in an event, whether it's something you see on the tube, or just, you know, everyday scenes. Again in Sydney. This is shot full stretch, trying to get some sort of composition here. Shooting fashion, trying to get, you know, high quality images out of a mobile phone, using, because there's no app for light, you know, light is its own thing. There's no way you can make an app which is going to give you better light. You can control it, but you can't bring it. I bought a little LED, 120 LED sort of video light, and I've used that in shooting portraits and in shooting events, which gives me images which no one else would have with a phone. So just little things which kind of could give me a bit of a creative edge. And then the big pillow fight recently in Trafalgar Square. And at one point, my phone got smashed out my hand by a pillow, and luckily there's about that much feathers from all these pillows. So it just went bounce. It's fine. I think what I've learned most is not what I've shot, but what I've seen. I've seen so many images on mobile phones. These devices allow you to create and consume on the same device. You know, you're not taking images and then going somewhere else to consume. You can switch quite quickly between creative and consumption. And I've learned a lot about the power of silhouettes and symmetry and sunsets, which you see a lot of. But I've always tried to take lessons from the greats, these photographers who really, they try to contain so much flavor in an image, and that's kind of been my motivation, is to always shoot and share the best images I can. So Iceland's it's not too hard to take a good photo in Iceland, but I think I'm going to go into some slightly less visual stuff now and try to talk to you about what I've kind of come to learn from mobile photography. Starting from the top, iPhone and various other phones with cameras in about 2008, I took so many photos in 2009. I had a 32 gigabyte iPhone 3GS, and I just took photos every day, and I would say probably about 100% of those are crap. And but you've got to take those bad images. It used to be 10,000, you know, your 10,000 first images are your worst, you know, this kind of photography thing. Now I think it's your first 100,000, you know, it's really because the cost of me taking those images is almost nothing. You know, it's just time. Whereas developing film, going to a dark room, all these things, that's just no longer around, that's no longer a problem. I had my first photo exhibited in Berlin in 2010, which was great. It's kind of weird to have an image exhibited in Berlin and to live in Sydney. Kind of annoying for your photos to go further than you know. But I've just recently got back from a trip to Berlin to meet the guys, another app which does photography. Then myself and a friend, Misho, who we kind of bonded over this obvious mobile photography experience. We curated a Australia-wide Instagram exhibition, and we had a few people donate some things, and we ended up having this great exhibition of mobile photography of Australian suburbia. And we started with 2,500 images being submitted to a hashtag, and from those we took 33 images, we put them in an exhibition space, and it was fantastic, and the whole community turned up in Melbourne. And then a strange thing happened. People kept using the hashtag, and it developed this kind of life of its own. And so even though we cut off the entries at one point, a lot of the good images kept coming in, and so we had to put up a live feed of images which had been submitted between the cutoff and the actual exhibition. So I've been curating mobile photography exhibitions at Head On Photography Festival in Sydney for a couple of years, and up in Derby at Format Photo Festival, working quite closely with the director about how you can bring mobile photography into a photo festival and what it can be. You know, there's just so much potential in a device which allows you to interact and allows you to consume and create and allows you to kind of participate. And I think participation is where a lot of this has kind of taken off in the last few years. So then I started teaching with the Australian Centre for Photography as a first step, and recently I've been teaching at the Tate and the V&A. A bit more on that later. And then last year Burberry contacted me and said, oh, we need somebody to take photos for a campaign. We need you to go to rock concerts and take photos with an iPhone. And there's this special thing where you get into a photo pit at a rock concert and everyone's there with their DSLRs and you've got an iPhone, and the guy next to you goes, what's going on? But I shot about 24 gigs, both here in London and in New York, and it was ridiculous because, remember, I'm not a photographer, you know. I just do this when I can, as I can. And then I founded the Selfie School because I thought it was a ridiculous idea, and it still is. But to give people the ability to learn photography through taking selfies is one of the most powerful ways, because we do treat these things like mirrors. We treat these mobile devices with so much more trust than you might imagine. And I've been writing for Filter, the British Journal of Photography mobile magazine, and I recently got interviewed by Time Lightbox
which was really great as well, just to be able to give photojournalists a bit of perspective of what they could be doing with this space. So this was Burberry. These are the shots. Shooting to a brief was something a bit different. Sorry they're not large for the people at the back there. It's pretty much black and white, grainy, traditional rock and roll, which is great because an iPhone in low light will stick to black and white, thanks. It's really about capturing what a client needs, and I think what you get a lot of these days is pleasing images, sunsets, silhouettes, symmetry, these things which people can consume without really having to deal with any, information. Whereas I think brands that are doing it well, they're trying to create an image, an iconic image, or at least a representation of the brand through the imagery. Selfie school, I taught at ASOS, 35 fashion bloggers, and one guy who was teaching them how to take selfies. So it's kind of do what I say, not what I do. I don't take that many selfies. But it was phenomenal to see how these people could quite quickly go from, not really understanding what they were going to do with the creative process to taking some awesome shots. And this is at the Tate Gallery. Again, just giving people this kind of perspective of how they can react to light and color and composition. It's not something that they face. They don't have this feedback loop of, oh, have you tried this? So giving them this real experience of somebody looking over their shoulder, they're going to take this away and not take 1,000 selfies. They're going to take this away and think about how they're going to capture their family and friends. They're going to think about how they take photos in all sorts of circumstances. So it was good fun. So I guess why has this happened? Because I'm not a photographer, but I think there's this general rule which I can come to, which is kind of follow the money. And if I had to follow the money, $1 billion is a good figure to start with. Instagram was sold for $1 billion. And there's a good reason that it was sold for that much. The guys who founded Instagram went to Stanford, and they were taught by a guy called BJ Fogg, who, I'm sorry again to the people down the bottom, it's not really that interesting. All the interesting stuff's up here. But he teaches this behavioral design class, which is really interesting, particularly in a mobile age when people's attention spans are almost 10 minutes, I hope. This has really been kind of a point of interest for me because the medium is mobile. My photos go out on mobile screens, and I deal with people who are on the same platform, and everything is quite shared and equal. So why is Instagram, this sort of success? And it's because of these things. There's the motivation, the likes, the follows, the comments. There's no unlike button. The ability, the filters were what the original point of ability. Everyone was taking bad photos, so they gave people filters which gave them this creative control. Now they've got the ability to control exposure. They've got a really good editing set for mobile because most people walk around with their iPhone and Android screens quite low brightness. So you can now bump your brightness up on your images, which makes them more visible. Things like that. And the trigger is, of course, these notifications and all these things which come through mobile. But it's created this incredible photographic behavior, which hasn't existed ever before in humanity. I mean, everyone here is a photographer in their own way. So you can see here how, using the incredible analytics suite of Google, Twitter took off and is now on a decline, whereas Instagram is steadily increasing. Blue, Twitter. Red, Instagram. Snapchat, still down here. That's okay. Then we can go even further back in time, and I'll talk to you about the experience economy, something which I'm trying to understand now because I think it comes to a crux right now. The experience economy came out in 1998 from a couple of guys from Harvard Business School, or wrote about it in the Harvard Business Review. And these four realms are really kind of where Instagram images are sitting at the moment. You've got the entertainment, which also is where Vine is. The aesthetic, which is where a lot of people are working with things like VSCO, which adds the ability to create this real aesthetic of an image. Participation and immersion, which is this escapist thing. This is, again, really asking people to contribute to hashtags. And education, where there isn't a lot of stuff at the moment, but more on that in a second. So again, follow the money. Hipstamatic was one of the early risers in terms of mobile photography. Very simple process. It replicated a photographic experience. You chose a lens, you chose film, and then you took a photo and it automatically applied that stuff. You didn't get the original image. That's dropped off completely. Snapseed was very interesting because it got bought by Google because they were trying to get into this space. They never said how much they paid for it, but they ended up putting Google Plus as the first sharing option. Didn't really work for them, but it was a good try. And now VSCO, which recently got $40 million in round 1 funding, Series A funding from a venture capitalist firm. That's not bad for a couple of guys who started out making filters because they were shooting weddings to get to this point. That's pretty nice. But you've got to look at, why are these people making money? And it's because we're buying the tools of creativity. And we all want to have a go. So because of these, I've only got 10 minutes, so I'm going to cut to a couple of key points that I want to raise. I think photography is more now about a performance art than it is a fine art. I think you've got to have a presence more than you have to have this kind of this other side of it, the printmaking, which I still think is very important. And I do like getting people together and sharing prints of images, particularly a lot of services which now allow you to do printing from your iPhone. It's quite good quality, so have a look. But I think that this presence is such an important thing. All these photographers who use images I used to see on National Geographic magazines, I can actually directly comment on their photo. That looks average, or or what app did you use, or are you in London? Let's catch up. And I've had those experiences, and it freaks me out because these are people who were gods, early on, and now I realize that it's a very level playing field. Participation and the design for participation is what Instagram is, and I think that experiences will follow. Looking at museums and galleries and brands and all these things are looking at designing experiences around participation because we can share experiences, in ways we never have before. And I wonder when I first started shooting with a mobile phone, for a number of years, it wasn't photography. Photographers would say, it's not photography, which was really a fun conversation. But now they say, oh, it's just photography, which is a really funny point to get to. But I wonder, is photography really the right word to look at where it's going, to understand it as photographers? Because I think photographers as a whole have to adapt and have to learn new ways to interact with an audience and to build these experiences around their work. There's still room for the purist, the fine art printer who goes to a dark room and creates these images. But I think that if you don't explore these opportunities, you may not look into photography in the way that it's going. I'm not a photographer, but if you'd like to get in contact, these are the @s I curate with the Mobile Photo Network. So every day we're curating images off Instagram following a hashtag. So if you want to look in submitting to those street and documentary images. Selfie School is there, not using that too much, it's self-explanatory. And Ogsy on Instagram and Twitter and everything like that. And I'd love to, if anyone has any questions or comments or any conversations, please get in touch. So thank you.